So now what we're going to do is, since we have a database, we're going to start scaffolding out our project. So I need to, first, we're going to put this into source control. Right here. And I'm going to say database successfully created. And we'll commit that out and push it out. Let's open back up the project. And let's start to scaffold this project out. So the first thing that I need, after the solution loads, you're kidding, right? Try that again. I have a fast computer, it shouldn't do that. Okay, and now we need to add the new project in here. And I'm going to say that this is a .NET Core project called a class library. We'll put it in domain and call it opendjradio.domain.lib. And in this I need to add my new class here called entities, and then pardon me, not class, new folder entities, and a new folder here called enums. And I'll bring in these entities and enums. Okay, now you can get rid of the models folder in here. And if I look at this, we can comment out my database context for now. Pardon me, we want to leave everything except for these and then these. And we'll remove these and build it. And I need to look at my namespaces in here, and this needs to be a open DJ radio.domain.lib. And this is only going to be for my current project. And the reason I'm canceling is that I have a typo there. Okay. So I'll rebuild it. And we're good to go. The next thing is that I need to add in a new project in here called the opendjradio.domain.codefirst. And in this one, I'm only going to bring in my application DB context. Which needs to be under opendjradio.domain.codefirst. We need to add a reference to core, and then also add these back in. Now for this, use SQL Server. If I look at my dependencies here for NuGet, we have 2.64 of identity server access token validation. So I want to look at this one and add it on to my code first. No, it's the I want to look here for identity server for, and it's called use SQL server and NuGet, and see which package it says that I should be using. This is what I want. We want to add identity server for identity framework 2.10 so that we match the versions and put that on code first and install it. Are you kidding me? I just did all that to add on identity server and that wasn't the one. Or it never added it. Two point 1.0 is what I told it to put on there. Yeah. Still doesn't have it. If I look here at NuGet, is it an identity model? Entity framework tools. Let me look at this again in NuGet packages. Let me get rid of it here because that didn't do it. We need to remove. If I was to, for example, copy this context back up here and look at it, this one is a part of Microsoft.Entity Framework Core version 2.1.1.0. So I want to say NuGet Microsoft.Entity Framework Core. And here we go. This is what was causing me problems yesterday. I need to specify the version, which is going to be install package version 2.1.1.0. And we're going to add that. You're kidding me. And then we want to look for the use SQL Server extension NuGet. And we want to add in this one. So when I do this, I need to specify my version, which is 2.1. Like that. Now it's working. Finally. So now I can delete my migrations from here. And now what I need to do is open up my FreeNAS so I can look at my SQL server. Just a second while I input a password, please. Okay, we're back. I am connected to production, so let me do that. And come back over to the overlay. You guys want to play some Hungry Hungry Zombies? You can start up a game. Now what I want to do is I want to look at my database in here, and I have Open DJ Radio right here. And if I look at it, here's all my tables. Chat messages, currencies, plays, rooms, currencies. Yep, that looks right. So let me delete this. And now I'm going to do an add migration and call it my init. Says can't find these classes in application user, so we can delete that one and try it again. Like that. And we'll build it. Good. Now we can do my database build. Now things are working correctly, finally. Okay, the next thing I need are my libraries. So I'm going to make a new class module in modules called OpenDJRadio.lib. And in this I need to have a couple of folders. One which is called DTOs, one which is called VMs, one which is called requests, one which is called responses. In lib here, we need to make a new folder called DTOs, a new folder called VMs for view models, new folder here that was weird. A new folder in here for requests and a new folder in here for responses. So we add a new DTO in here. Pardon me. And in this, we're going to say that this is the base DTO. It's going to be a public abstract class, and we're only going to have in it a good for the ID. Now we need to scaffold these these things out. So I'll make a copy and paste them in here. And we'll say this is application user DTO. Like that. And all this is going to have is the username and nothing else. So that. And this needs to be in dot. Whoops. These need to get moved to here. And then we need to have in here a new class called a base VM, which is a public abstract class which has a prop GUID ID and a prop date time called a timestamp. We need to have a request called a base request, which is a public class base request. We need to have another one here called base update request, which is a base update request, which is inheriting from base request, which needs to include a GUID for the ID. And this needs to be abstract as well. We need to have a response here, which is called response, and it's going to be a public of type T, where T is a type of base view model. And in this, we're just going to return the iCollection of T called data. Okay. That should do it for here. And now when I look at this, we're going to change it in this project to be opendj.lib.dtos. And this is a base DTO, like that. This one here is an application user room DTO. Which is a base DTO, which doesn't have this, doesn't have anything. It's just bare. Okay, the next one here is connection DTO. Which is a base DTO, like that. And then we don't need this stuff on there. This is the next one for room currency, which is a DTO. Like that. We have a chat message here. Which is nothing but the message and a base DTO. You guys are so quiet today. I'm going to start some Hungry Hungry Zombies. You guys can play if you want. I wonder if that sent. I don't think it. Nope, it did. Okay, this one here is a currency DTO. Which is a base DTO. Currency weight, time between tick, last updated. We only want the name and the weight and the quantity and the time. Like that. And now the next one is playlist DTO. And this is a base DTO called playlist. Just like that. The next one is room. And this is going to be called base DTO. We can close out all of these. See any R's? Yeah, we had an R. Okay, song. DTO. Like that. Okay. The next one is song playlist, DTO. Which is inheriting from song request DTO. Like that. This is song queue DTO. With no anything but that. And then a song request DTO. Which is a base DTO and nothing else. We have a transaction DTO. Which is a base DTO. Which has a transaction type and a quantity type. And then finally, transaction song queued DTO, which is a transaction DTO, like that, with nothing on it. Okay, now we need to do the same for the view models. So we'll copy these again, bring them down here into view models. And I want to change this to be view models in my current project. And this is a application user VM, like this, which is a base VM, which has a room DTO, playlist DTO, song queue DTO, and an application user room DTO. Okay. That looks good. Before I forget, in my code first, I need to, on application user here, builder.entity application user dot has index called ASP.NET is unique is true. You also want to do the same thing for username. No, that's okay. Okay, the next one here is application user room VM. Which is a type of base VM. Like that. Which is not going to have either of these, but it's going to have a room DTO and an application user DTO. And then these. And no virtual on these. Same thing here. Okay. We're on connection here, so this is VM. This is a base VM, which is a application user room DTO. We'll just do all of these before I forget. And the reason we're removing virtual is I don't want lazy loading on. Same thing there, there. Good. You also have this one here, which is a VM, which is a base VM. And it's just going to be a application user room DTO and currency DTO. And transaction DTO. Okay. So those are all good, except for this has virtuals in it, which it doesn't need. Okay, chat message here is a chat message VM, which is a base VM and a DTO. Okay, you have a currency VM. Which is a base VM. we'll add in the room DTO here and the application user room DTO. No virtual. We have a playlist VM. Which is a base VM. Which is an application user DTO and a song playlist DTO. Okay, we have a room VM. Which is a room VM, and this is called a base VM. Yep. No virtual. These are all DTOs. Like that. We're almost done here. Okay, the next one is, oh, what a strange word this is. I'm not sure I'm going to get it. Okay, so the next one here was Song VM, which is one of these as a base VM, and then this is a song DTO. This one here is a song request VM. Which is a base VM with a song DTO attached to it. The next one is a song playlist VM. Which is a playlist DTO in the count. Oh, I think I know what the word is. Okay, we have a song queued VM. And then we only have 2 left. Okay. There's our song queued VM. We have our transaction VM, which is a transaction VM passing in a base VM. like that. Okay. And then the last one here is the transaction song queued VM. Like this. Okay. The next things that we have are our requests and our responses. So if I was to make a request here, I'm going to have a currency create request, which looks like this. Okay, as a public, and that's going to be a request, base request. And the next one here is going to be a, currency update request, which is a base update request, which needs to be the everything except for the room ID. Okay, you still have so you need to make a playlist. So you have a playlist create request. Which is this here as a base request and a public we don't have a application user ID on this. Just like that. And then you also need to have a playlist update request. Which is a playlist update request. So you want to have a song playlist create request, which is going to be one of these. This doesn't matter. So this thing needs to be you need to have a song request create. Yay, I won a black zombie flower. And I can look at this and do an HHZ. And I can see that I have collected the black zombie flower. Okay, this is a song request, create, request, which is a song request, create, request, which is a type of base request, which will have a playlist ID on it. It'll have a song ID on it. And this is a song request, and this is going to be a song playlist, create, request, and you just need to have a playlist ID on it. Okay, you need to have a song queued create request. Which needs to be a weighted value, application, the room ID, like that. We need to have a song create request, which needs to have this stuff on it. And then a song update request. Okay. I'm just checking to see here if I've got them all. You have a transaction. Create request, which is this. And then you need to have a transaction song queued create request. Which needs to have a song queued ID. Okay, we need to have a application user room currency create request, which needs to have this stuff in it. And then it needs to have an update request. Quantity increase or decrease. So this will be quantity changed. But that's not going to map correctly, so you need to do it just quantity. Okay. We should make a connection. Application user room connection create request. Like this. Which is a connection ID is online, has ping been sent, and then the application user room ID. And then you're going to do another one for the update request. Which doesn't have a connection ID. We do want to add into the domain. We want to have another one of these indices, which is on application user room connection. And you want this to be on connection ID. Like that. You only create the room when you make a user, so we don't need to worry about that. Well, it wouldn't hurt. So we'll make another one here called application user room create request. And in this we want to say it has this stuff here. So a room ID like that. And this is going to be an update request, which isn't one. You need to have a application user room So hold on, what about application user? We do need to have a application user create request, which is this stuff here. We don't need to worry about these. And we want to have the update request. Like that. Okay, that's looking good. You have one for playlist, for songs, for currency. You don't have one for chat message yet, so you'll add that. And then you need one for room. So we need to have a room create request, which is this stuff. As a public room create request called a base request. And then we need to duplicate this for a room update request. And then finally, you have one more for chat message create request. Which is this. Which is called a base request. And that should do it. Now we need to set these up on our auto mapper. So if I look here at startup, I thought for sure I had an auto mapper. Yeah, create auto mapper right here. Hey there, Omega Thaw. How are you doing? Welcome to the channel. So we're going to do a c.createMap from my application user to my application user DTO. And we'll do a reverse map. We need to do the same thing with the view model. Yeah, we're working in C# at the moment. I'm making the ASP.NET Core WebAPI for the backend. So we're going to do a application user create request to a application user, and then a update request. Okay, we need to rinse and repeat for application user room. And you don't have a application user room update request. Okay, the next one is connection. Application user needs to go to application user room connection for these. And the next one here is currency. Okay, the next one is chat message. The next one is currency. The next one is playlist and then room. Okay, the next one is song. The next one is song playlist. And then you have one for song queued. And then you'll have one for song request. And then transaction. And then the final one is transaction song queued. And we can get rid of these outdate requests that don't exist. And we should be good to go. One thing I need to add in here before I forget is I need to add some error logging. So I need to, underneath entities, create a new entity called log API and one called log error. This one's going to have a GUID on it for my application user ID. And then also it'll have a string for the exception, the string for the IP address, and that's enough information for log error. For log API, or we need to make sure that this has a list of log errors on it. We also want to make sure that this has a table name called log errors. Log API needs to have that same thing. Which will have a public base entity. And this one needs to have on it the player called GUID application user ID, and then a application user, and then I want to have a prop int for my response code, a prop string for my IP address, and we need to have something in here called a endpoint type called endpoint type, which we'll add in here in enums. We want to make sure that both of these are on the context. Logs API, logs errors, chat messages, okay, we need to have now a DTO here for this called in here. How many classes am I using? Actually, that I don't know. Quite a few. This will be log API DTO. which is a public base DTO, which just has this stuff on it. And then you need to have the log error DTO, which is these two. We need to make sure that my application user has log API on it. Okay. We also need to make sure now that I have a log API VM, which is this, which is a public base VM. And then we need to have this again for a log error VM, which is this. We finally need to have a log API create request. Which needs to have these things on it as a public base request. Without that one. And then you have to have the last one here, which is a log error create request. Which is this. And now we need to add that onto the auto mapper. Which is in here. Add it in right here. This is room goes to log error API. And this is room and it goes to log error. The next thing that we need to do is create our services for writing this to the database. So first things first, let's add a new project and domain called opendjradio.domain.bll. And in this I want to have a base BLL called base BLL, which is an abstract. And then I want to make sure that I also have something in here called automap, which is a public static class where I'm going to declare my automapper in it. which is a public static IMapper called create automapper. And I need to add this to the project. Which is automapper for domain BLL. Okay. So then back in here, when you're doing this, you can do this as a automap.create automapper. And we can add that in. Okay. The next piece is that I want to have a new project in here in the modules called OpenDJRadio.DataAccessLayer. And this is going to be called OpenDJRadio Services. We're also going to need a new project in here called OpenDJRadio.DLL. I'm also going to need a new one in here, which is called we're say that this one is OpenDJRadio.WebAPI.client. Is that what we want to call it? Which we're going to say is OpenDJ Radio Web API Client. Now, is there any other modules that we want to bring in here before we really start to code out some of the logic? Well, the first thing that I want to do is when I look inside of my data access layer, I want to make something here called a virtual asynchronous task called create application user asynchronous, which is going to pass in an application user create request. And here what you want to do is now with this services, you're going to instantiate it with every call. So we're going to say that this needs to have in it an application DB context called context. And now what I want to do is I want to say var entity equals, we also want to pass in here the IMapper called mapper. So we need to add in manage NuGet packages, automapper to the data access layer. Hey there, Mr. Bankster. How are you doing today? And this is going to be a mapper.map to my application user this request. Now, to make this a little easier, what I could do is a protected virtual asynchronous task called create, which is going to pass in a T, U, and a V, where T is a type of base request, where U is a type of base entity, and where V is a type of base VM. And this is going to be a T request. And in this, you're going to say var entity equals mapper.map to U from request. And then you want to say context.add entity. And then I want to say if my context.save changes asynchronous is greater than 0, as in await, then we can return the mapper.map to V of my entity. Otherwise, I just want to return null. The next one here is going to be update. Base update request. And so in this one, you're going to map from the, you first need to get your var entity equals context dot find asynchronous s where my it's an update, but you want to map it first. So you need to get the entity, which is a find asynchronous of my request.id. And we want to get this as a find asynchronous of type U. And if my entity does not equal to null, then we're going to map all the properties across. Then you're going to do a context.entry of my entity.state equals modified. And then you're going to say, if in fact you can save it, then you're going to map it to VM. Otherwise, you're going to return null. Okay, you need to have a read, which is going to be a GUID ID. You're just going to have a base entity and a view model. And then you're going to map it to V. And then the final one is delete, which is a protected virtual asynchronous task of a bool called delete, which will be a U, which is going to be called a GUID ID. And in delete, you need to say var entity equals await context dot find asynchronous of type u, passing in the ID. And if my entity does not equal to null, then I want to do my context dot remove my entity. If my await context dot save changes asynchronous is greater than 0, then we want to return true. Otherwise, I want to return false. Where u is a type of base entity. So now when you're doing this, you're mapping your create request of the username and the ID over to here. But you also want to create the room. So you also need to have a room code. And you're going to say var room equals new room, which is going to be a context dot application users dot add entity. And this is going to be entity. We don't have anything for there or there. This is automatically going to be set to public, right? Yeah. Our room code, which will be equal to my request.username for now. I want to make sure that in my context, that rooms has a index on room code which is unique. And also you want to do the same thing on usernames. And that should be it. And then you should do a context dot rooms dot add room. And now if my await context dot save changes asynchronous is greater than 0, then I want to return here a application user view model. And you want to go ahead and do a entity dot add this new room, which is a context dot app dot rooms dot add. And then you want to do a return await get application user asynchronous, which will be a entity.id. Otherwise, I want to return null. So you also need to have a public virtual asynchronous task of application user VM called get application user VM asynchronous, passing in a GUID. And you're going to do a var entity equals await context dot application users dot first or default asynchronous with the ID is equal to ID. And you always want to include the room with this one. Like this. And then because you know that you're going to need to do this a second way, we need to also do it with a string here called ASP.NET user ID, which is a ASP.NET user ID is there. Okay. We also want to have an update for it. So this is a update application user and an update request. And with this one, the only thing I'm updating is my username. So I want to say var entity equals await my context dot application users dot first or default s where my ID is equal to my request dot ID. Hey, Mr. Bankster, greetings again. How are you today? And now I want to say if my entity is not equal to null, then we're going to do entity dot username is equal to request dot username. And then we'll do a context dot entry of my entity dot state equals modified. And then we'll do a if my await my context dot save changes asynchronous is greater than 0, then I want to return a await get application user async from my request dot ID. Otherwise, I want to return a null. And the last one here is you want to have a delete application user, which is going to be a GUID ID, and it'll pass a bool. And what you want to do for the delete is actually change on your entity. We want to add in here a prop bool is active. We're going to say true. So when you read this one, we want to do where my ID and my s.active equals true. Same thing here. Okay, so now if it does not equal to null, then what I want to do is a context dot application users dot remove the entity, and if my await context dot save changes asynchronous is greater than 0, then I'm going to return a true. Otherwise, we're going to return a false. That was exciting. This is called read application user asynchronous. Okay, the next one that we have is I'm going to change all of this to be a application user to be a room. So when I look at the room, there's no more create request. So let me get rid of that. We'll have a read room here, my ID, and an update request. So this is going to be my rooms, and we want to include nothing. And we're going to convert it here. This is the update request. And this is going to have room code is public and is room online. Is public and is room online. And then when we delete it, we remove it there. Okay, the next one is we need to do a application user connection create. So we'll close this stuff up, and I'm going to change my application user to be application user room connection. And in this one, read application users rooms connections asynchronous. Just one. I guess in this one we don't need room. Okay, you have another one here, which is going to be by your context, your connection ID. Okay, you have a create here, where you're going to map this across, and then this is a rooms connections.add, the entity. And if you look at this, it also needs to have the application user room ID, which is being passed here. And this needs to be the connection ID. And this is the update. So update the application users rooms by the is online and has ping been sent. Like that. All right. And then the delete here, which is application users rooms connections first, and then we're going to, I don't want to remove it. What I want to do is I want to say dot active, no, entity dot active equals false, and then context dot entry dot entity dot state equals modified. And then if we save changes, then I want to return true. It's going to be a entity dot active equals false, and then your context dot entry entity dot state equals modified. And then this one here is entity.active equals false, and then context.entry of my entity.state equals modified. Okay, Same thing here. We can do a context.entry of my entity.state equals modified. And then this one is your entity.active equals false. Okay, we're making good progress here. We have connections done. We need to do a room create and a room update. So that doesn't matter so much as this is a update application user room asynchronous. And we can get rid of the user room create request. Application user room update. I deleted the wrong file. This needs to be an update request. And this is a base update request. And then when you create your room, we need these. Oh, it's an application user room. Shoot. So my apologies. That is a create. Create request and then an update request, right? So this needs to have a prop bool is online. And that needs to be here in the bool is online. And is online, and is online. This needs to be an update request, which is just going to be an is online. Okay. In AutoMap, we need to say there's no room create request, but up here, update request. And then also we need to have a create in here. Where we do a var entity equals mapper dot map to my application user room VM of my request. Then I want to do a context dot application users rooms dot add entity. And then if when we save changes, I want to get application user room asynchronous, which will be my entity.id. We need to have the same thing here for the read. Which is a GUID for the ID. And all you're going to do here is var entity equals await your context dot application users rooms dot first or default asynchronous s where my ID equals ID. If my entity does not equal to null, then we're going to map the entity as a user room VM to my entity and we'll return it. Otherwise, I want to return null. Like that. And then the last one here is update application user room, which is here. And I want to do a application users rooms first or default. And then I want to do it for the is online is the only field here. Like that. And you only want to do this where and s.active and s.active, and then we want to have our delete, which is delete application user room asynchronous. And then if this is the case, then I want to do a context.applications users rooms.remove entity, like that. So the only one left for these is room currency. So let me add this one in here. So we're going to say application user room will be application user room currency. So when we read this, we're going to get applications users rooms currencies. And then we're going to map it. When we create it, we're going to create a application users rooms currencies. When we update it, application users rooms currencies, and all we have is quantity. And I'm going to say quantity to change. And then this is your delete. And then you'll remove it. Like that. Hey there, Tommy K. How are you doing today? Welcome to the channel. These things look good. The next one we have is chat message. So we'll say application user room currency will be chat message. And this is chat messages. This one here is chat messages. There's no update. This one is chat messages and chat messages. The next one is currency. So we're going to change here application user room connection to application user, no, to currency, and then application users rooms connections to currencies. Good. No connection ID on this one. This is your entity.id. This is the update currencies. It needs to be name, weight, quantity, and time. Name, weight, quantity, and time. And then we have the delete, which looks good. Okay. Well, I'm sick by holidays, so I don't miss something in the university. That's a good time to get sick, though. What about you? Just working, trying to get this app completed before the end of the year. We have log APIs, which we only have create and read. So this needs to be a currency, needs to be log API. And currencies needs to be logs API. Okay, here's the create. Looks good. We need to do the same thing with the error log. You think I'll finish? I'll finish or I will finish? I think I'll finish, yeah. This is logs errors. The next one you have is a playlist. So for this one, we're going to change application user room currency to be playlist. So this is read a playlist. Okay. This one is to create a playlist. First thing I want to do is I want to get my var user equals await my context dot application users dot first or default where my ID is equal to my request dot. It's a GUID application user ID. And we want to include here my playlists. If my user.playlists.count is less than my user.playlist count, then we can create it, which is this entity. I'll add it to playlists. And then we're going to say if this, then that, and then here this is return null. Okay, this one is update playlist, so you're going to get your playlist here. And we want to get the playlist name and is selected. And the last one here is delete playlist, which is this and this. Can you explain to me what the GUID structure is? Is it comparable to object.gish hashcode? So in Entity Framework, I've defined a base entity here where I have a unique identifier called ID, and it's a GUID. So it's a 16-bit integer, so they have an astral chance of colliding with another GUID. So because of that, every other table in my app can derive from base entity and include that ID, and then if I want, I can search through the entire database for any type of record and return a polymorphic query if it matches that ID, because it's an astral chance of colliding. So this one here is a song. So we're going to read a song here. We're going to create a song here. Up here where I created this playlist, my entity dot application user ID equals application user ID. So playlists get them. Application user rooms get them. Like this. Song queues get them, as well as log APIs and log errors. So this one here is a GUID application user ID, as is this one. And we need to do a entity.application user ID equals application user ID. And then same thing in here. Well, this doesn't exist. So instead, we're just mapping this song across. Then we're going to add it and then read it. Okay? This is update song. So we're going to get it. And we have song name, YouTube ID, and song length. Song name, song length, and YouTube ID. And here's delete song where we remove it. Why shouldn't you use a dictionary then? I'm not sure I understand. I'm using Entity Framework, so I'm tying into SQL Server. Okay, the next one is we have a song playlist, a song queued, a song requested. So the next one here is I'm going to change this to be song to song playlist. And then this is entity.application. There's no user ID. It's a playlist ID. So that's okay. That'll work. And then this is your delete. Ooh, delete song here is actually deleting a song. We need to do this as a context.song entity.active equals false, context.entry of entity.state equals modified. Right here, context dot, it's a entity dot active equals false, and then we're going to do a context dot entry of my entity dot state equals modified. Right here. This needs to be entity dot active equals false, context dot entry of my entity dot state equals modified. Here, this is going to be entity.active equals false, context.entry of my entity.state equals modified. Looking good. Here, this is entity.active equals false, context.entry of entity.state equals modified. Looks good, and good. Okay? So we were finishing song, and then we were on song playlist. And instead of doing this, we want to do a entity.active equals false, await context.entry of my entity.state equals modified. Okay, only a few more here. We have one for song queued. Song playlist is now song queued. And songs playlists is now songs queued. Okay. Okay. When you're creating your song playlist, that's fine. And that's fine. You don't have one for song requests. And then the final two, hey the UK dude, welcome to the channel. How are you doing today? The final two here is we have a create and a read for the transactions, right? I guess you could also have a delete for a transaction. So we're going to change these to be a song queued to be a transaction and songs queued to be transactions. Okay. And then the last one is not bad on yourself. I'm doing great today. Getting a lot done, which is nice. Little unclear as to why. Oh, I see. Because we're duplicating this. So this needs to be a transaction, needs to be a transaction song queued, I believe. Transactions, songs queued. Transactions, songs queued. Transactions, songs queued, like that. Okay, now that we finished our service, I can extract the interface from that. And if I look at this, this thing's going to be a little bit of a mess, so I'll just leave it like that for now. And then in my web API, I need to make sure that in startup that I am adding in here, I'm adding a singleton for my auto map, I'm adding a transient for the paths auto chat, and then I also want to do a services.add transient for my open DJ radio service. Passing in open DJ radio services. And we'll rebuild.